We all know the importance of a good netminder in this league. Goalies can make or break a season. And in our league we actually tend to have pretty good net minding as a whole. So who do we think were the best tendies this season? At number 5, we have Pavo Huesa for the Coventry Blaze. Coventry had a really good season this year, finishing 5th but pushing all year to crack the top 4. I think part of that was finding the depth scoring they have missed in years past. I think part of it was Johnny Curran finding that next level. But a big part of it was Pavo Huesa. Now when we look at the stats, it doesn't look particularly impressive. There are other guys with better numbers. But for me it's watching this guys, you see what he does to get to saves, and keep the Blaze in games at times. They came second in the league for overtime wins, and a large part of that is Huesa being such a clutch goalie. He played 47 regular season games, with a 90.72 save percentage. He recorded 28 wins, and 18 losses, with 6 shutouts. For me he had to go in the top 5. At number 4 I have Shane Owen. I know he hasn't had his best year this season by the numbers. And perhaps the Flyers didn't have the success they would want. But I think Shane Owen is night in, and night out, their best player. He keeps them in games they have no business being in. And the amount he has relied on every season is crazy. I think if you asked me to build a team, and I had to pick a goalie, Shane Owen would be right up there in the conversation. And his performance this season, particularly in the Challenge Cup, cannot go unnoticed. This is another guy, when you look at the numbers it doesn't look great. A modest 90.87 save percentage, accompanied with a record of 14 wins to 40 losses. However, you don't really need to look past his games played. He played every single second of the Flyers season this year. He stands on his head, and keeps them in games they have no business being in. I had to have him at 4, a bit lower than last year, but I think he absolutely deserves to be here. At number 3 I have Tyler Beskorowany. Last year I had him as my number 1. And there is a good chance if he had played the full year, I would have again had him at number 1. However, I cannot justify having him any higher for this season, with the amount of games he played this year. That being said, I still have him pretty high up at number 3. The way he can get up for those big games. I don't think there is a better goalie for a winner-takes-all game than Besko. And that is reflected in the amount of hardware he has won between the pipes. Looking at the stats, they are really impressive. Again, just with only playing 18 regular season games, I couldn't put him any higher in this list. However, in those 18 games, he has really put up incredible numbers. A 94.02 save percentage is just unreal. 15 wins, to 3 losses. And with 4 shutouts in just 18 games. And for me the most impressive stats. Just 26 goals against in 18 games. Giving him a goals against average of 1.45 per game. If he played some more games, there is no doubt he makes number 1 with these numbers. At number 2 I actually have Jeremy Brodeur. I totally understand if people want to give me some trouble for this pick. But I think he has been fantastic this season. The Storm had a pretty good year. And I do wonder if having a goalie as your coach really helps put the goalie in a comfortable space. Putting that structure in place for a guy to come in and make some saves. I think DeLuca has been great for them, and guys like Simmons are great players. But I do think Brodeur has been a standout for them, and should get some recognition. Another aspect that helps me judge how a goalie has done, is looking at how the other goalies on their team did. Compare him to the Storm's backups, you can see how much better Brodeur played. It wasn't about the team in front of him, he came in and made an immediate impact with his play. And he didn't have a wealth of highlight reel saves. But that tells me that he was doing things right. If you put up great numbers, with very few highlight saves, that means you were in position. Squarer to the shooter. And reading the play well. And that's why I think he has to be number 2. Looking at the stats, He played 36 regular season games, finishing with a 91.68 save percentage, which is pretty good. The record of 16 wins to 20 losses is again pretty good for the Manchester Storm. He only had one shutout this year, but I think that actually goes to show how consistent he was. This is not a guy whose numbers are propped up by a couple great games, followed by long stretches of average play. This guy was night in and night out a solid performer. He finishes the year with a 3.34 goals against average per game. That isn't a particularly close stat line, but it's good when you compare it to the team as a whole. The Storm ended the year with a 3.76 goals against average. Putting Brodeur between the pipes saved them half a goal per night immediately. Before we get to number 1, here are my honorable mentions. Ben Bones didn't make my top 5. But he was close. I want to hear from Devils fans, but every Cardiff game I saw, he seemed to have incredible games like the Bones of old. But there were also plenty of pretty poor games. I don't think there was another goalie in this league that let in as many soft goals as Bones. Followed by an unbelievable highlight save. I just couldn't justify putting him in my top 5 this year. Then I have Jackson Whistle. I have said this many times before, but I think Jackson Whistle should be a starter in this league. I get he likes Belfast, but he will likely back up Besko as long as he stays there. The problem is I struggle to have him in my top 5, as a backup goalie. But I think if he went elsewhere and played as the starter he cracks the top 5. I also have Taran Kozan. I think he was potentially the best backup this season. And part of me wanted him to take over as the starter. Again, no disrespect to Bones, but I think at times he let in soft goals that Kozan just didn't. I think Dupont should have played him more. Again, I struggle to have a backup in my top 5, but I wanted to give him a shout out because I think he was great. Lastly, I have Eamon McAdam as an honorable mention. I know I might get a telling off for this take. And I know most would have him in the top 5. He backstopped the Flames to second place in the league. So close to the best team in the league. But again, I just felt like at times he let in some soft goals. And it has to be said he kind of fell apart in the crucial moments. Take that final league game between Belfast and even in the playoff games against the Panthers. I just felt at times he looked pretty average, and I feel like the success of the Flames was by committee, and not necessarily because of McAdam's play. And lastly at number 1, I have Sheffield Steelers goalie, Matt Greenfield. The Steelers had a bit of a disappointing year by their standards. But not for a second do I think that lies on Greenfield. I think the Steelers' struggle started with lack of scoring, and also taking too many penalties in key games. But night in and night out, I felt that Greenfield was their best player. The amount they relied on him through the year to keep them in games was incredible. And I think he absolutely deserves the top spot this year as the best goalie. Playing 53 games this season, he was the most played goalie just behind Owen in the regular season. To be relied on so heavily, by a team that has aspirations of winning the league title is really tough. You have to be at the top of your game all year long. He finished the year with a 92.01 save percentage, which is really solid. A final record of 36 wins, to 17 losses. With 7 shutouts. I think the most impressive thing we can pick out is that goals against average. 2.22 per game. If you only allow just over 2 goals per game, it puts your team in a great position to win every night. I just had to have him as my top goalie this year. So that's my list. Do you think I'm right? Do you absolutely hate my list and just need to vent about it? Let us know in the comments below your top 5 goalies of the season. And also, which goalies need to come back next year? Let me know. As always, thanks for watching, and take care.